Greetings, friends, and I hope you're doing well today. Remember, this is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. So I hope you'll be able to do that some today. Quick way of review before we start our next pillar for today. Remember, we started our series in Proverbs chapter 9 and verse 1, in which it says, Wisdom hath thrown out her 7 pillars. Wisdom hath builded her house, yea, she hath hewn out her 7 pillars. In fact, there's another passage in the book of Proverbs as well that also talks about the pillars that are found there. That's why we call this Practical Pillars for Powerful Living. Today we're going to be looking at the pillar of morality. You know, as we were looking at the last couple of pillars, we also mentioned that the devil has an anti-pillar, almost like a sledgehammer, if you will, that he would like to knock the props or the pillars out. Of course, when you take all of those pillars out, all of a sudden the house falls. Well, this is one of those that particularly has been used by the devil. It's a favorite tool of his for both Christians and non-Christians alike, the pillar of morality. Proverbs chapter 6 and verse number 23 says, For the commandment is a lamp, and the law is light, and the reproofs of instruction are the way of life. Jumping down to verse 27, it says, Can a man take fire in his bosom and his clothes not be burned? Can one go upon hot coals and his feet not be burned? I think that's a pretty rhetorical question, because it would seem really impossible to walk barefooted across hot coals and not be burned. I really don't think I want to try putting fire up against my chest either. But that's what he's talking about. He's talking about the pillar of morality. Some years ago, it's mentioned that Sir Winston Churchill was asking a lady, trying to determine a lady's character for a position that he was in need of. He decided to test her character like this. He asked her if she would marry him for a large sum of money, or she would marry anyone, rather, for a large sum of money. Why, she said, of course I would. Then he asked her, well, would you marry a person, and he named a very trivial amount, the equivalent in America as $20. It was in the English pound system, of course, but she angrily snorted, Why, what do you think I am? He slyly and coyly looked at her and replied, We've already determined what you are. Now we're just determining how much you cost. And so we have to remember the devil has sold America a cheap bill of goods when it comes to this, or just a really cheap trinket, so to speak, when it comes to the pillar of morality. What happens to a person, not only a person, but also a society, as goes the church, as goes the home, goes the church, as goes the church, goes the society. And we've seen that that is really true, and it really plays out. You realize when the pillar of morality gets knocked out, all of a sudden things start to crumble. You know, there are several things that I'd like for you to think about. When you get into immorality, it damages your character. Those around you, those who thought you were one thing and yet feel like now you're another. Proverbs chapter 7, if you were to look in Proverbs chapter 7, the whole passage deals with the pillar of morality pretty much. And in this passage, it describes a young man who goes near the street corner of a lady of the night, and it appears that he intended to go just to look. He really did not intend to stay. But what's really sad is it appears also that Solomon, who penned this, was almost watching this unfold and yet doesn't stop it. Remember, Solomon's mother was Bathsheba, and of course his father was David. He watched this whole sordid thing display in his own family's lives. He also had immorality in his own life, and it seems that we've often mentioned he was the wisest king who ever lived, who made some of the dumbest decisions of anyone who ever lived. Not only does immorality damage your character, but it damages your conscience. It takes your consciousness and it dulls it so that you no longer see things as right or wrong. It destroys your control, where you no longer have any control. In the book of Proverbs, many times it talks about one not having control of their own house. It also, in Proverbs chapter 2, verse 16, Proverbs chapter 2 and verse number 16, we'll look at that briefly. It says, to deliver thee from the strange woman, even from the stranger which flattereth with her words, which forsaketh the God of her youth, and forgetteth the covenant of her God. For her house inclineth unto death, her paths unto the dead. None that go into her return again, neither take they hold the paths of life. You see, it reminds us that a person, whether it's male or female, that gets into these kind of problems, it is going to eventually cause them severe problems. They'll cause them to lose control. Sin always takes you further than you wanted to go. It disgraces your children if you have children. I remember one time talking with a man who had a young child, and he was going to have to explain to him why he and mommy were no longer going to be living together because of immorality that he had allowed to slip into his life. It disgraces your children. It discourages your church. Those that are around you, they see what has happened and it discourages them, and they begin to lose faith in those who are even sometimes called in ministry. It dishonors your calling. I believe each person has a special calling on their life, and of course those in ministry even have a more significant calling. The devil knows that, and many times he will try to make those, particularly in ministry, but any who name the name of Christ, fall. He can't get your soul, but if he can cause you to fall, especially in a state of immorality, no matter what that immorality might be, it will dishonor your calling. More importantly, it dishonors your God. And that's something we would never want to do, is to bring dishonor to our God. How do you deny immorality? There's some simple things. Sometimes it may even be as simple as, how do you dress? Do you dress to bring attention to parts of your body that you should not? Your demeanor? Do you need to be careful in flirtatious attitudes? How do you act with those around you at work or at school? You have to be very, very careful with that. You have to be careful not to assume that you can never fall. Those that take heed lest ye fall is often a reminder to us. Be careful you watch where you go. The man in the Proverbs account was just going to go by. He wasn't really going to stay. Be careful where you go looking for love. If you go to look for love in a bar, you're looking in the wrong places. Often I have seen, it's almost always true, if you find someone in a bar, that's also where you will lose them. And so you need to be careful looking in the wrong places. Lastly, and what I think is most important in helping guard your heart from immorality. Now, the word immorality can encompass a lot of things, but the very first place it starts is your devotion. Your devotion to your family. How devoted are you to family? Stay close to your family. The family that prays together and plays together will stay together. Take time to play together, pray together, and be together, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to fight off when the devil comes at you with this pillar of immorality. Be true to your family. Be true to your spouse. You know, it's often said that a great marriage is made by falling in love many times with the same person. Keep the marriage fires hot. Go on dates. Make sure that spouse knows that you are the only one for them, and they are the only one for you. Make sure that they are secure in your love and that you trust each other. A weird sort of thing that I often mention to families is, don't ever have separate checking accounts. If you do, just make sure that you keep up, that both partners have access to those accounts. For some reason, when people get separate accounts, they think that it's mine, and it's mine and yours. And when you get married, it's ours. It's no longer mine and yours. And oftentimes in immorality, it's like, well, I can use this fund to go here or do that. And so make sure that you keep a very open, honest relationship with your family. More importantly, your devotion to God. You know, I don't think I have ever counseled with someone who has fallen into immorality, whether it be a pornography addiction, whether it be something online, whether it be an actual affair, whether it be just any form of it. There's one thing that has always been the same. I would always ask, how is your devotion life to God? How is your devotions? And without fail, everyone that I counseled with would kind of look down a little bit and they would say, well, it's not been too good. I said, well, how long has that been? And usually it's been for quite some time. When you begin to let your devotion life slip, then other things start to slip. And yet I have never heard of anyone who was staying close and reading their Bible really, really well and studying the Bible, they don't fall into immorality. Because the Holy Spirit is there to guard you and to keep you from doing that. The Bible tells us in Proverbs chapter 6 and verse 23, for the commandment is a lamp, and the law is a light, and the reproofs of instruction are the paths of life. How can you make habits that will make you pure in thought and action? Let me encourage you, find yourself a verse that when you are tempted to do something you shouldn't, quote that verse. And quote that verse repetitively until those desires go away. And that will help you very, very much in the pillar of immorality. As we get ready to close here, one of the things I want to remind you, remember to read a proverb a day that matches the calendar, because a proverb a day will keep the devil away. And I hope that you have a very blessed day today.